Good morning. That is Mr. Nat Kingo introducing Viewpoint, the program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. We certainly got 2 out of the 3.
Yes.
Thank goodness she's not a politician today. 23% of Logan County voters. Where were you, folks? Anyway, we're going to get right down to it. We have a really very important guest this morning, one with a significant impact on education in this country. And we're going to have Judith Kay introduce her in just a minute. Jenny, we have a couple of little housekeeping orders to take care of this morning. First thing we want to do is kudos to the folks who participated in the polar plunge. My son Greg did that one time, and it was a lot colder than it was today. He said it was pretty tough going. So those folks raised some significant money out there, so congratulations to them. The Elkhart Historical Society, they had an overflow crowd at their latest meeting where had Paul Beaver talked about the Irish in Logan County and some more of the Abraham Lincoln business. And they're going to have a reprise on that, and that will be Monday the 26th. And you can log on to the Elkhart Historical Society on the internet to get information on that fun thing. Now, let's get right down to business. Introduce our guest this morning, Mrs. Busby.
Yes, I would be proud to do that.
Yes.
Jenny Buccos is the Project Explorer organization's director, producer, and creator, by the by. This young lady has dedicated her life to the education of people here and abroad. And I think most of us feel that if we give ourselves a chance to know more about people abroad in cultures that vary from ours pretty dramatically. Mm-hmm. You know, it's easy to sit here in mid-America and say, I don't like the people from, and fill in the blank. But if you get to know something about them or know anyone from there directly, it kind of changes your perspective by a measure. And Jenny Buccos has set herself out to do this. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the great introduction.
Well, I'm pretty impressed. You know, I think you're doing what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about how you bring life in Thailand or South Africa or even England, which would be, of course, more like our society. How do you bring this to American people, and what do you bring from here to these people abroad?
Well, and the easiest way to do it, fortunately, is through the internet. 99% of schools in America have internet access. Mm-hmm. So the easiest way is to go abroad, film, and share that over the internet. That way, anyone in the world can learn about another culture, another people, another history. Unfortunately, when I started Project Explorer, YouTube didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine going to schools and trying to tell teachers that I was going to do video for students. They had no idea what I was talking about.
The word had probably never been explained to them.
Exactly. Fortunately, I started this in 2003. YouTube started around 2005, 2006, right around the time I filmed my first series. So I had spent 2.5 years interviewing teachers on how they teach and what materials are in the classroom. So by the time I finished the first series, YouTube had started and everybody was sort of on board with this whole video thing. Mm-hmm. So it made it very easy after those first 2 years. But we went from an audience of 40,000 people our first year, and in 5 years we've developed it to 5 million. And that's with no advertising budget, no marketing. So that's the power of the internet in making our world a smaller place.
Well, the interesting thing is the genesis of this. You know, we talk about the old term thinking out of the box. Judith Kay and Jim, here's a young lady who did significant thinking out of the box. I have to, if I had my fedora on, I'd tip it in your direction out east to you, Jenny. Tell us about the origination of this program and what prompted you to take this course in your life.
Sure. I'm from a small town in upstate New York, a town of 800 people, primarily an agriculture and farming community. So I didn't travel as a kid. We went to Canada once, and we went to Mexico once, and that was a beach holiday before you even needed a passport to go there. Mm-hmm. after university, I moved to New York City, and I was working at an investment bank, and this was, when the dot-com boom was going on and the economy was great. So anyone could go get a job as a temp at an investment bank, and they said to me, would you like to go to Asia? And I said, I don't have a passport. So they helped me get a passport, and they dropped me in Asia to do, just some basic administrative recruiting work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I wasn't in the bank, I became a fearless traveler, and I just went out and explored the culture in the city, and it was so different from anything I had ever experienced in my small town.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time, I was surrounded by people who didn't look like me, who didn't speak my language, and it just struck me how different my childhood would have been if I had been exposed to things like that.
Mm.
Came back, lost my job at the bank after September 11th, and then started to see the fear in Americans in what was unknown. And I thought, how could I use the experience I had had abroad and this newfound American fear, and use it for the good? So I decided, okay, what education's the route to go? Emailed a friend of mine who is an educator, and he said, let's do this on a global scale. And the only way we could think to do it on a global scale was online.
Mm.
So it'd be great to take kids abroad, but honestly, you can't take 20 million American students abroad.
Not very easily.
Not very easily, yeah. So, it just happened to click. Everything fell into place, and, I was the first person doing this online, and I'm the only person still doing this on a global scale. And the great thing is it's free.
Now, what kind of feedback do you get from educators here?
We like to say we're the best kept thing in best kept secret in education. So the feedback we're getting is incredible.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely incredible. So what we're trying to do is we're not trying to replace education, what's being taught in schools. We're just trying to supplement it and empower teachers with anything that they can get their hands on to interest students. So all of our videos are under 3 minutes. So it's not taking away from your traditional math, your science, your American history. It's just a 3-minute thing to spark an interest of somewhere else in the world.
Well, isn't that just the beginning of the whole of education? Is having an interest and interesting the kids?
Exactly.
And getting them involved and engaged in what's going on. It's really nice to know all the theorems from geometry, but really, it's hard to work them into any conversation ever, and it's not something that's changing our life on a minute-to-minute as on a personal level basis. But this kind of thing affects our life, especially your third series, I think, on Jordan. Anything in the Middle East. You mentioned that your job took a header on 9/11. And ever since then, we've all been thinking about anybody from the Middle East as could be a terrorist,
Exactly.
Well, what kind of people did you meet? What are you presenting to the youngsters here in this country about the people from the Middle East?
Okay, so we cover everything from the history to the food. So starting with the Middle East, Jordan was part of the Roman Empire. So they have a long-standing European Christian tradition. So if you're thinking, oh, it's all Muslims or Arabs there, Jordan, you're talking probably, scientists believe, where Jesus was baptized.
Mm-hmm.
So, starting there, that's already relatability for so many Americans.
Mm-hmm.
We went to an all-girls school, a refugee school, so what it was like for a day in the life of a student there. These are 8- and 9-year-old girls going to school and running their student parliament. Now, if students in America can't relate to what it's like to campaign to be your class president, I don't know how. I don't know what else to cover. But we did a lot. We filmed in the desert with the Bedouin. One of the things that is probably the most powerful that we covered in our series was when our male guide, the herders in the desert, the Bedouin, put the head covering on one of our female presenters. And that, for so many American students, seeing that female, that black covering where all you see is the eyes, that little thin slit of the eyes, it is a symbol of fear for so many Americans. And when you're in the desert and there's a sandstorm and it's 100 degrees and you're a camel herder for for your livelihood, that's a pretty handy thing to have on.
I should think.
And covering that from that perspective really opened a lot of students' eyes. And when I go in to present in schools and I show that video, a lot of students will raise their hand and say, isn't that a symbol of terrorism? And I said, well, I was on a camel for a day and a half in 100-degree weather, and certainly not. That was the most handy thing that I could put on.
You know, the question occurs to me, the matter of logistics, young lady, gathering together, how do you make hookups, connections with people like the camel herder in Jordan, or if you go into South Africa somewhere, Judith and I wouldn't know how to call a taxi cab, let alone, if you can get one. But how do you make these, there's a lot of logistics involved there.
Oh, absolutely. We don't just go and film. The first thing we do is we call a tourism board. And the tourism boards work very, very closely with us. And they have people on the ground who are experts in what they do. So I will say I need to film a food segment, a music segment, a history segment, a day in the life segment, and they'll come back with recommendations on what we should do. And then I'll take those to teachers and say, what are we missing from your perspective? And they'll come back with a list. And then we point it down to, if we're going to film in the desert, they'll set us up with a young guide who that's what he does. But they typically work with journalists, people on the Travel Channel along the lines of like Anthony Bourdain and Andrew Zimmern. I'm sure some of your listeners are very familiar with them. A lot of the people that help them, Andrew Zimmern's been really great with us. He'll pass on the people that have helped them. The people on the ground, they're called fixers, so they fix things for you. But that's where we start. And then, you know, we've done all of our research 3 months in advance, so all of our scripts are written. And then when we get there, we have local experts, you know, making sure we get everything on point and we're not offending anyone. And the nice thing about the governments we've worked with, no one has censored us, so we're allowed to say whatever we want to say, as long as it's factually correct.
That alone is a little bit surprising.
Yeah.
Now, Jenny, specifically here in Lincoln, Logan County, how would an educator, let's say Mrs. Johnson or whomever, want to know about this project, and how do you connect with educators in Schenectady, New York, or Lincoln, Illinois, so that they can find how to get in touch with you and get your product in front of their youngsters?
Okay, the easiest thing to do is just go on our website. It's projectexplorer.org, and if you Google it, 50 things will come up. So that's easy.
I reckon.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's the whole educator guide. So if you say, I'm a science teacher, and we do include science. We've done like the science of zip lining in Thailand, so you're learning Newton's laws of motion through exotic destinations. So you can just plug in what subject areas you teach, and it'll tell you everything we have available. And if you have questions, you can email our team directly from there. We're in every U.S. state and 40 countries around the world. So, you know, people are using our stuff. We'd love to have more people from Illinois. We just got the entire state of Kentucky on board with us to use our stuff. So
through their state education department, is that how that works?
Through their state education departments. And again, we're not trying to replace education. We're just trying to supplement it and give teachers everything that they could possibly need to excite their students.
Now you mentioned something about the videos from these various sites being just a couple 3 minutes. So what do you offer then to supplement or augment the video itself? Are there questions or tests or little write-outs? What do you do, Jenny?
Right. So it's designed like a virtual field trip, so you're coming along with us. So all of the videos are supplemented with an educational travel blog. So if you learn best by reading, you have that. And embedded within that blog, say you don't know what Amman, Jordan is. The word Amman, Jordan will be keyworded, hyperlinked, just like Wikipedia would. And you click on it, and it'll bring up an encyclopedia-style definition for you. So in addition to the 340 videos on our site, we have about 1,500 text-based materials, 1,500 images, and 200 to 300 lesson plans. Now, those lesson plans, again, are all free of charge. None of them are tests, though. We believe in encouraging dialogue in class rather than regurgitation of facts. So, for example, in South Africa, when we talk about apartheid, one of the lesson plans would be systems of segregation throughout the world. So that ties to the American Civil Rights Movement. So it's still tying to American curriculum, but it's just done from a global perspective.
And we are a global world. There's no such thing as isolationism anymore.
You can't fight it. So
that's right.
So you asked about feedback. The only negative criticisms we've gotten is, why can't you go more places, which costs money.
Well, you brought up the point. That's the operative word there, young lady. Money. You obviously have to have some significant sponsorship. This is free to the folks who take advantage of these great programs that you offer. As you suggest, that's at no charge to the schools and so forth. But somewhere along the line, somebody got to pony up some rather significant money for you to do this. Yours is a non-profit organization. And then secondly, you have a very significant staff in your background working all the time. And I was really impressed by the number of folks on board as your board of directors and all of your research people. So secondarily, after asking about the money, how do you recruit these great folks who do all this great work for you?
Okay. The money is actually pretty straightforward. You'd be surprised to find that we could do an entire series, start to finish, and get it out to students for about $100,000, which is not bad for 50 to 60 videos and all of that material. The bulk of our cost, our airline, our hotel, our guide, our driver, that's usually picked up by the tourism board for us. So they see it as positive public relations for their country, and we typically go to countries that have negative stereotypes in the media. So Mexico, Jordan, South Africa. So that's a boost for them. Aside from that, honestly, it's teachers who give us very small but generous donations, parents, people who understand the importance of global understanding, and then companies like Cisco, who are investing in their future workforce. So that's how we get our funding. And thankfully, when we get to the staff part, the majority of our staff works on a volunteer basis. So 90% of the money we bring in goes directly to our programming, which is unheard of in the nonprofit world.
Yes, 90%.
90%. So we do not pay for office space. I mean, we're very good at getting things given to us.
Well, that's lucky.
It's lucky, but it's 10 years of work. So.
But there's still no free lunch, Jenny.
Right.
And if the tourism board in these various countries is paying for your trip to showcase their country, how in the world can you be certain, and how in the world can you avoid the appearance of impropriety here? Are they going to just take you to the nice place, the pretty hotel, the pretty river? Or are they going to let you see some of the things that maybe aren't quite as pretty?
Well, we select where we go. So, yes, fortunately we do stay at very nice hotels, but, that is one of the perks of being a travel journalist.
Yes.
And it's also from a security standpoint. We are, as of right now, an all-female crew. So we do, require a level of security in these places with our equipment and in that degree. But we pick where we want to go. So, in South Africa, no one had a problem with us going into the townships and talking. And the townships are the communities post-apartheid, where residents still live in tin shacks and don't necessarily have indoor plumbing, things of that nature. We spent a lot of time there, and the tourism boards didn't have a problem with that. Because we're not there to cover it from a sensationalist point. We're there to cover it from an educational point. So when we're in these countries, really no topic is off limits. In Jordan, they let us film on the floor of a mosque. Now, you'd think after September 11th, any American wanting to film on the floor of a mosque probably wants to cover it from, this is a breeding ground for terrorists. They had no problem with us doing it because we wanted to show what it was like on the inside of a mosque. So we've been able to cover some pretty sensitive topics that most people won't cover just because it's from a point of learning. We're not there to spin anyone's opinion. The Mexico series, for example, when we talked about immigration and border control, we interviewed students and adults on all sides of the spectrum. People who said, let everyone in, and people who said, I don't want any more people to come into our country because they're taking our jobs away from us. Now, then that's up to our viewer to decide where they lie on that scale. But we're not here to put an editorial spin on anything, and sometimes that's very difficult when you have your opinions. But we're very, very balanced in doing that with our tourism board. So I can tell you one place we would never go would be China, because they would censor us.
Very carefully, I suspect.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned the word sensitivity. And looking over your staff, and I spent some time, quite a bit. It takes a lot of time if you want to get on Project.org website and work your way through it.
Yeah.
There's a plethora of information out there, which I found very, very interesting. And among that interesting subjects, I noted, in Jim Ash, and I want to raise a little question about that, the matter of gender on your staff. We kind of feel left out a little bit here.
Well, I used to have some incredible male hosts and cinematographers that worked with me, but about 2 years ago we did an international casting call looking for our next team of explorers, and everybody thinks it's the greatest job in the world, travel abroad and get to spend time in these exotic locations, not realizing it's 18 hours a day because we don't have any money to sit around. And I can tell you there were no men even in contention for the top 50 spots. So the women are really bringing their A game.
All right.
Well, I just noticed that you really have a significant staff here. How do you recruit these folks, Ms. Buccos? That's very interesting.
Well, to get people to travel with us, our on-camera presenters, editors, that's easy because you're offering them the opportunity to work abroad. So that's journalism, journalism school students, that's anthropology students, they're right out of college, they're eager to work. So that's where we get them. But from our board perspective, we use a matching service for that. So our board of directors is unpaid, as most nonprofit boards are. But there's a service in New York that says, I'm looking for a board member, and then they go to the big investment banks, the big firms here. And there are people who are senior level professionals who say, yes, I'm doing well financially and I'd like to join a board and put my skill set to that board. So I have a great board of directors who does everything from accounting to legal, so none of that is paid for.
My goodness.
And then all of our educators write our lesson plans and review our stuff free of charge.
This is such a sophisticated operation, Mrs. Busby. It really is. And speaking of money, we're going to have to take a short commercial break, and we're going to come right back here, Jenny. 648-5510, in case anybody has a question about this very, very significant subject matter this morning. Go ahead, Mr. Ash.